I did that first.
Who felt sorry for you?
You did. You gave me a stylus when I had that.
Do you still use that one?
Yeah.
It is good.
I thought I broke it once, which was a little traumatic.
This is good. What's it? Good.
Your contagion slides for some reason for the handouts don't seem to be rendering properly.
Oh, okay.
I can't tell if
Are they sad?
they're both Firefox and
I didn't look at them. I've spent an unreal amount of time on this. Because I changed the font. I changed the font. Yeah, I don't know what to say. What am I looking for? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right, I'll fix this up. So I moved to Z-LaTeX. God damn it. So I could change one thing in the font, right? So there's Font Awesome. Font Awesome, it's pretty cool. It's an awesome font. It's called Font Awesome, and it's for web, icons and so on. So it's a plethora of little nice icons for the web, right? Anyway, so there's a LaTeX version because LaTeX geeks are like, I must make this. So I had to change the whole thing to accommodate that. Anyway, so we have a new font. I tweeted it. It's great. Yay! But it was coming out pretty bad for a while. This one is the old situation. Right? I mean, working very hard for you on the back end in a way that should not be appreciated because it is ridiculous. So the big step forward this semester was to have different fonts for the math and the Roman text. Yeah, right. Very nice. Yeah. Before it was this stuff, but Helvetica in here, which is just a disaster. L's just it's awful. All right. Okay, so so I'm going to talk just a little bit more about the scale-free networks business, the Krapivsky and Redner approach, which gets all sorts of good things. And again, opens the box about universality and has a look at some nastiness and so on. And there's just a few little pieces to finish, and then we'll start on Contagion, which is great, right? Halloween, so obviously zombies are sort of a good choice for the theme. Some of you will have seen that, but I've tried to... zombies versus plants, yeah. Plants sometimes win, right?
That's usually.
But overall, don't you think? Zombies are usually winning that one.
No.
Like the big scoreboard of everyone.
Well, when you play the game, the plants usually win.
Yeah. Don't the good guys usually?
When you play the game? Well, if you're playing the game, that's what you're saying. Okay, right.
I feel like it's a really hard game.
Yeah, but a lot of people, it usually goes bad by the, it's hard to win the whole thing. Can you finish that one? Okay, yeah. The old computer games, when I was before things like the internet and so on, the games would they'd loop around and they'd just get faster, right?
Like fun.
Yeah, they'd just get faster. That was it. So you finish the whole, the world, the thing, and then they just start again, and it would be just faster. If you win Snake, I don't know. Just turns out that someone knows that. Okay, yeah. My favorite game was Thing on a Spring. This is very esoteric. Commodore 64, Thing on a Spring. Great game. Radar Rat Race was also good. That was which one? Yeah, Frogger was there. It was probably called something else though. They didn't have the rights, right? It was Wizard of War. It was good. It was pretty good. Yeah, but I don't know if they had the rights to the name on Commodore 64. Oh, that's good. All right, well maybe it was licensed for it. Because some others were obvious knockoffs. Like Radar Rat Race was that the car driving one where you put out little oil slicks behind you. What's it called? There'd be a different maze every time, and little cars are trying to get you, and you have to run over flags. You have to get 10 flags. The Radar Rat Race version, you have to get pieces of cheese. I totally clocked that one. It was great. Yep. So I think it's good. Okay, so there was this absurd thing where we changed the attachment kernel, right, which is this thing we've had repeatedly in lots of different circumstances, in what seems like a pretty simple way, and got out a really big range of results in that there's a scaling And I guess it's, so this is the exponent gamma, right, that we're looking for. This k to the minus gamma for the, so we're randomly selecting nodes out and looking at their degree. We ended up with this very nice, so it's a solvable thing, so that's always fun, because then you know you've really got something, right? This doesn't mean this applies to the real world necessarily. This is a very nice example of where, okay, you've got the basic problem, tweak it a little bit, do some math still, it's still solvable. So you can be absolutely, you can do some simulations and so on and check it's all true. And then maybe you have some real attachment kernel, which is much messier. And of course you can't do it analytically and so on. But this is something we do repeatedly. Random networks in general, another good example where we have bedrock results, analytic results. We're sure about it. And we kind of go out to the edge of and we go past it a little bit because we're insane and people forget that they're trying to study the real world. But you do as much as you can analytically, right? And then you're off into simulations. Okay. All right, so that was a extreme result that depending on how you tweak this, and so basically you're changing how attractive the nodes with one friend are, right? So the impoverished characters in your network. You can get your exponent to tune between 2 and infinity. So it's a huge variation. Right. Still a power law distribution. What happens though if you move out, and I guess I've presaged this, if you move out with, so we're going to tune it the other way. We're going to make sublinear attachment kernels. So the rich get a little bit richer, not as rich as they do for the linear one. So there's going to be k to the nu. And then we get, and I'm just going to give you these results. So there's some general findings. This little nk, right? So the number of nodes of degree k, you multiply it by t to get and normalize it and so on to get the right probability. But the frequency distribution is scaling like this. So we still get our exponent. This is a k. Now it's k minus nu sitting there, right? That's a solid piece. And then there is some messy stuff in here, some correction pieces. If you see, so this is a little bit nice, but you can see at least this piece here, if you took this away and differentiated it, right, you can see that you get a k to the minus nu comes down. So this is a little integrable piece. So they have a name, stretched exponentials, so that there is a power law, and then eventually this thing will get big enough to squash it, right? To start with, when this quantity is relatively small, this looks somewhat like 1 as far as this one's concerned. So this is driving everything, and then this takes over. And so power law, junk. And they're often kind of like this, or more generally say, some exponential term here. If I get that right, Weibel distributions, I may be lying a little bit. It's okay, a little bit of mild lying. It's Halloween. Okay, so, but yeah. So now you can mess around with the details of the kernel, do these kind of funny little switches and so on, but you don't get that same. It's not brittle. It's not a fragile situation. Now you have a robust kind of universality class. Okay, providing nu is less than 1. Now if we go the other way, okay, there's some madness. Okay, so this is just to tell you, they did some nice. Now we're kind of into applied math world, right? So. This is a result for nu between 1/2 and 1. If you're between 1/3 and 1/2, you get this piece, and so on, right? So if you're between 1/r plus 1 and 1/r, we have some madness. Yeah, it's all solvable, right? So that's a fun math thing. Don't have to do it. But clearly you want to go home and do it. This is just, if you... yeah, you're just in your free time, right? You could just verify this and, yeah. Okay, if we go the other way, we get, so well, you know the trend, you know which way it's going to go. So this made sense, right? So it's a stretched exponent, so it's a power law with a cutoff, right? You're not getting these big winners anymore, right? They're not taking off, fair enough, because they're not getting out as far as they do for the linear one. Now for the superlinear one, the rich are taking off, right? They're really accelerating. And you do get to a, you could now term it as a winner-take-all, right? So I think even for nu just greater than 1, there will be, a node starting to dominate. And there you can quantify this properly in various ways, but basically there's one node's going to really dominate. They call this a gelation phase to analogize it to some other physics kind of models. And in fact, if it's really strong, nu is greater than 2, right? You're really driving this mechanism up through the roof. Then all of them basically connect. It's basically a giant star mechanism. So, if you look at if you see something developing early on and there's a rich gets richer thing and you can kind of get at the micro details and see how things are kind of growing, right? You can sort of broadly see where this thing might end up. and you might want to switch it off if it's doing this. Well, if you're the peasants, this is the time to start uprising, right? Right? Because this is the sort of the king kind of structure, yeah, and a bunch of serfs, yeah, lots of serfs.
There's people around calculating that parameter.
This thing, I don't know. They tend to do it after the fact, once something's mature and big and large. I mean, but it's taken us years to do that. That example I gave for the Linux kernel, it's like blah blah blah. But this is 2007 or 8. So yeah, you could do it a little. You could go and look around and see how it's going. Yeah. Obviously, there are a lot more mechanisms, but in social networks, people have done this. Say with social networks, of course, they don't have this runaway sort of thing with real ties. But you could look at things like Twitter, where following is messy because of bots now. But you can start to see this. You do get this effect, right? Because you'll have 10 million followers or whatever it is. Whatever the leading number is now, which is Lady Gaga. Still? Yeah.
Why would you want to know what Lady Gaga?
They do. Justin Bieber is huge. I mean, he was huge early on. I think he was #1 for a long time. Yeah. People do. No, they do. They do.
Justin Bieber, I could understand if it was the whole, Bieber, but like.
So that totally makes sense, right? Right? But Lady Gaga?
There are Gaga nuts out there, though.
Yeah. We will have an example of one. We'll have an example of one soon, actually. It's just, she's sort of the most famous person. I mean, if it was years ago, it would have been Madonna, right? I mean, she's the #1 person. I guess, her job is also to keep that base very excited. I mean, so she's always throwing things out. Well, so I mean, there is a reasonable sort of theory that here's all of culture is eventually driven over time by what teenage girls do, right? And, the way we speak, right? The way we behave. It's a nice theory. I like it.
It seems to be sensible.
This is sort of like an engine for cultural stuff. What's that?
Not 13 anymore.
Right. Yeah. You know that. Yeah. You don't. Right. No. Right.
You still
Right.
have the greasy nerds who like the movie, and that kind of drives
That does drive a different part.
movie business.
The which ones?
Greasy male
But I
nerds
feel
that
like
go to
teenage girls.
It's more complicated than this. Yeah.
Teenage girls really like men without shirts, which is kind of like
Thor's coming out.
very excited.
This explains. Yeah. Okay. Russia, perhaps. Right. Really? Okay. Good. Good to know. Justin Bieber without a shirt is good. No. Okay. Right. Okay. So that's okay. There's a limit. All right. Okay. So. Yeah. So I don't know.
You could really be controlled.
See, here's another. So Twitter's full of bots as well, which are confusing for the follow count. But there's also the feature now that when you sign up, this has been around for a while. When you sign up, and you would have seen this if you signed up recently, it prompts you to follow people. It wants you to be sort of a human to start with, like follow 20 people, and then you're in the. But the ones they present you with are all. It's a rich gets richer phenomenon. Really bad version of it, right? Because they'll say here are celebrities. It'll be Lady Gaga and Jay-Z, right? They'll all be just there.
They do that with
Sports people.
Snacks, that you have to like
Yeah.
a certain number of things before you can create an account.
So there, and then that just accelerates this process, right? Yeah. Well, in that case, now you've got a funny, right? So now you've got this distribution, and you're actually shining a little, right? You're just putting a little. You're saying, okay, you can only look at this. So it's another thing. You're saying, in fact, you could imagine trying to figure this out. What do you do if you're only allowed to connect to the top 10 plus some other random things? How's that? What sort of distribution you get out of that, right? So it's a variant on it, but we make this happen all the time. So there's a real difference between 10 and 11, right? If you're looking or whatever the list goes out to. People love making lists of the top whatever, and it has a big effect if a lot of people will try to get into that top 10 because it's a different game.
Do they also give you the opportunity? I mean, you pump in your contact list.
Yeah, no, they do that. Absolutely. The very first thing, though, is, hey, follow Lady Gaga. And, I think And you can click on, if you want, like science and tech, you can choose a category. You can start to choose a category. But I think it kind of opens up pretty strongly with, the guess that you're in this category. Make it easy. Yeah. All right. So there's a little nutshell for this guy. Of course, this is just for models of networks in general. Right? We've had graph theory for a long time, but we're trying to think, just as we've talked about now, we're thinking much more about the dynamics of these things. How do these things grow? I mean, it's just, this is a really fundamental question that you have across science, very universal, becoming. How do things become things? When we had description and explanation, right? So this still is going on. We're still producing work where we're describing new networks or networks in different ways. And then, of course, you want to explain these things, so the micro to macro kind of thing. At least you've seen this now. Degree distribution, it's the big deal, right? But then there's other pieces that have been proposed and kind of refined over time. So clustering assortativities, homophily here. This is an overall structure, meaning the modularity. That's really remains a gigantic kind of part of this. People are still arguing about how to do that. And there's a lot to do, right? And so now you see in the physics literature, they're talking about temporal networks, right? And it's this completely obvious thing. And the people have been working on it for a long time, but it's a framing now. Okay, now we're studying temporal networks. So like, okay, so it's like the piranhas are sort of hungry again, and they're struggling a little bit. Now they're kind of, the thing they're eating is not so good. But they've kind of they've built up something to chomp on. All right, so, okay, this is supposed to come, this is supposed to appear perhaps more randomly in the whole thing. But this is just a little reboot before we get on to the next piece. This is crazy, actually, because so this is unbelievable. It's like wagging he's got his foot going like a dog, right? So these are hard to find in the wild. They're in water. They're pretty sharp, but this is ridiculous. This one is his tummy scratching. It's fantastic. This really is good, yeah. Kind of feel like we should get a pet platypus. So my grandmother a long time ago saw one in the wild. It's very unusual. It's hard, to not deliberately kind of go out and try to find it. It's great. So about it, right? Of course, there's the whole beak thing, but they have poisonous spines on them, and there's the electromagnetic stuff going on. Laying the eggs, right? Fur, everything. It's all going on with these guys. And their nearest cousins are echidnas, which are, the Australian version of the porcupine. Because they lay eggs too, right, the monotremes. Lower body temperatures, different body plan, just a whole craziness going on.
Are the ones that are also really hard to track?
Echidnas? You mean, are they hard to track? Because how are they hard to track? They're little spiny little guys. Yeah. I mean, you'll find them. No, you'll see them. Oh, well, they don't move very fast because they're like porcupines. They're like, bite me,
Yeah, if you put like the tracking collars on them, they can hear the sounds and they'll run away from them.
Oh.
You can actually track them.
Oh, they don't have a. Oh, okay. Oh, like it just seems like a sortable kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. Really? Are they have good ears?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's also a little sonic critic today.
What are we talking about now?
Sonic. Remember?
Sonic, yeah. See, I did miss this one. There's Perry the platypus. Perry the platypus? Right? Perry is the, yeah? Okay. Phineas and Ferb. I mean, this is important. You need to have your, I mean, we had the Tasmanian devil, but that was kind of not, yeah. Severe, he didn't speak, he was psycho, it's true. They can actually, they don't do this, but they can actually, they can eat basically anything, those guys. Yeah, they don't, yeah, it's disappointing. Okay. All right, so it's generally, there'll be a bit of an intro to Contagion. I've had some fun, like this guy's sitting on our front porch right now, zombie pumpkins. Our smallest one has been heavily at work with pumpkins. And because I'm the only one at home at the moment, knives have been used liberally. So, sure. Mum's on the phone saying, "What are you doing?" Like, oh, no. Yeah, I know. She can see it later on. Yeah. We're cleaning guns and like stuff like that. All right, so I'm going to give you just a general piece about Contagion, and then the next, I want to focus a little bit. It's some work we did later a few years ago, but it's about R0, this reproduction number, which is a fundamental thing that's talked about a lot. Just want to expose that as a bit of a funny piece in here. Right, makes sense, right? So if someone's a zombie, how many more zombies are they going to make? Right? That's a good question. Yeah. It's a very pressing kind of issue sometimes. So anyway, we'll have some fun movies. All right, so contagion, right? So there's biological contagion, which comes in all sorts of forms. I mean, you certainly have diseases that can spread, very quickly, like Ebola, and sort of, excitingly, disastrously. And then ones that take a much longer time to manifest, and therefore can, so HIV, right? So they get a lot further because of that. But there are a lot of variations to biological disease. But then if we start thinking about social contagion, how those things spread, I mean, there's a very natural desire to kind of lump them all together, right? So is this, can we, and people do this all the time, right? Da Vinci Code, I mean, were these things, Sudoku, I mean, how did that spread? Did it spread in a way that could be likened to some kind of biological disease, and not just metaphorically, right? We'll do that. Glick has in the information, has a nice little line there that the alphabet spread like a contagion. The alphabet was contagious. I mean, it's a very short sentence, as I recall. I'm trying to get in my head, but it was something like that. Because the statement was sort of invented once and then just went everywhere. Like, this is good. I like it. Yeah. Language, right? Religion, democracy, lots of things that we spread and try to spread, and things that spread. So we have this, right? We have these, what I'll call naturomorphisms. The feeling was contagious. The news spread like wildfire. We like to make all these, this is fundamentally how we think as well, right? So George Lakoff, for example, has done a lot of work and sort of said a lot about this, right? That metaphors are such a big deal for the way we think. And perhaps traditionally we're not really given a lot of sort of a fun thing in language, but actually it's very deep reflection of how we categorize the world. I mean, look at politics, right? We have left and right. That's a bit of an accidental thing, to be honest, but spatial metaphors are just waiting for us to kind of get trapped in them. That one comes from the French Parliament, I think, from a couple hundred years ago, right? The ones sitting on the left and the ones on the right. And political space is a much more complicated, bigger space potentially, or it could be, right? But it's now sort of, in certainly a large part of the world, just left or right. So you're somewhere on a line, which is much easier to think about. So we've made it, we get ourselves into traps with metaphors. I mean, it is part of how we think. And sometimes it's a great thing, and sometimes it's bad. Maybe politics is fundamentally, it just took us a while and we sorted it out. All right, so there you go, freedom. This is from a while ago. Freedom's the most contagious virus. And that's a strong statement, right? Coleridge, nothing so, right? Enthusiasm is contagious. So Ambrose Bierce has, I redid everything so I could get that little symbol in there. Pretty much, actually. Ambrose Bierce, so the Devil's Dictionary, remember this? You remember this? Oh, so it's a dictionary full of smart aleck statements from the 1800s. He was a funny kind of character. Right, so the doctrine that everything is beautiful, including what is ugly, everything good, especially the bad and everything right that is wrong. It is hereditary, but fortunately not contagious, right? So you should look that up if you don't. Ambrose Bierce is an interesting character. So that's the definition of optimism. Okay, all right, fine. That's to go against the idea that it's not, right? So that's a statement against Coleridge. This is Eric Hoffer. Heard of him? Interesting character. This guy was a stevedore, right? He worked on the docks in San Francisco, time where things weren't going very well and so on, and it was through the Second World War, and then afterwards started to write these books that became very famous, and they're full of aphorisms essentially, and they, they're not. It's not science, it's not like he went and interviewed bad regimes and so on, but he was very much worried about or thinking about totalitarianism and so things. So it's after the Second World War, things going bad after that point. So, and this is one of his lines, and I'll point to some more things. So the grandeur and the uniformity of the mass, right? When something spreads across, sweeps like wildfire. I mean, we just do this all the time, from one end of the continent to the other. People roaring with laughter, or whatever it is. The Red Sox win, and they're all happy, right? And on the other side is all cries out in pain. They don't do that, right? The Cardinals fans are all. They're above board. They're nice people. They're like clap, clap, clap.
No.
There's a story about this, though, that they're not like that. They're not.
They didn't lose all 4 of them this time.
That was a little bad, yeah. Okay. That was terribly bad. So 100 million people roar with laughter, right, blah, blah, blah. There's an overpowering feeling that in this country we've come nearer to the brotherhood of man than ever before. So this is, in the 50s. So there's a suggestion that we all follow Lady Gaga or something. It's great to have that resonance with other humans, right? And we are imitating monsters, which I'll come back to that later on. That's going to be a big thread. We, as people, we imitate all the time, and one of our powers is we don't really know we're doing that, right? That makes incredible cohesion possible. If we're all mindless automatons, that would be one thing. If we were all copying each other but knowing we were doing it, that would be another thing. But I think we're sort of in this extra category where we do a ton of imitation. We're like, I'm an individual. Yeah, I'm not. So he has all these kind of great lines, right? We can be absolutely certain only about things we do not understand. Mass movements can rise and spread without belief in a God, but never without belief in a devil. Where freedom is real, equality is the passion of the masses. Where equality is real, freedom is the passion of a small minority. So he sort of books full of these things. Anyway, but this is about mass movements, right? So how do things take off? How do they sustain? Things like the Berlin Wall, right? That falls at some point, but that's a big surprise to everyone, actually, even the people who were very keen on that happening. Okay, there you go. This is good. It's from despair.com, which is an alternative site to the success posters, like teamwork is great or whatever, right? This is the opposite version. It's been around for a long time. So when people are free to do as they please, they usually imitate each other. And here's another good one here, which is less, never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. There you go. Idiocy. You can get these nice posters. But right, so I mean, we do great things collectively, and we do very bad things collectively. So understanding that is hard, and it's very hard because, going back to the metaphor story, we're good at thinking about individuals. That's kind of what we are. We're these embodied story things, right? It's hard to think about 10 people making a decision together. It's hard for them to do it, but it's hard to sort of see how that works. It's hard to kind of, right? And even sports teams, which inherently are teams, right? It's often the case that we'd like to take the best player and say it's that player plus the rest of them, sort of thing. Like that's a bit easier to, get a handle on. You talk about the president being in charge, made whoever the president is, made all these decisions today and thought of all these things and so on. Of course, it's a much more larger body of people that are involved. All right, so it's hard, and I think, extrapolating from ourselves to large groups, disastrous. You should never do it. You really shouldn't extrapolate from yourself to any social sort of system. It's very tempting. We do it all the time. Every time there's always someone who will pipe up and say, but something about it. Basically they tell you about their family, right? They're like, the Christmases are awful for everyone or something, right? And you're like, okay, that's not.
Sorry to hear your family sucks.
Yeah, that's basically it, right? Okay, so here's a few spreading examples. Yeah, it's right. So this is a certain kind of building spreading in the US. So this is very traditional kind of spreading. Yeah, it's Walmart. Yeah. So there wasn't a case that it sort of opened up in LA, and right, they didn't do that, which they could. They could have gone to the big centers, but it was actually based on trucking routes, right? Whoa, that was surprising. Yeah. Right, so it's very kind of strategic, efficient. All right, new stores are in red. And they're filling in some of the gaps, so it's not just a pure thing. But this is how, say, the Black Plague spread more like this sort of thing, right? Before we had planes and so on, moving us around. And trains. All right, so that's a simple kind of spreading. There's this one, I don't know. This is kind of can I show you this one? This is actually from I could get this. Will it work? I have to do this. Come on, thing. Sorry. Let that run in the background. I should have this buried in here. So I'm looking for, nope. Come on. This guy. Click, click. Okay. So this is from the
U.S.
2008.
elections are always close, but the nation was shocked Tuesday night to see John McCain defeat Barack Obama by a single vote.
We sure showed them what a comeback looks like.
For many, shock soon turned to outrage as the New York Times revealed the identity of the particular non-voter responsible for Obama's loss. In just a few short days, this...
Okay, so what's going on? This was a viral video sent around, and I'm not saying either side of politics is right, but this was a clever video in that it made people send them around, right? You think about how to get things to spread. You need average people to spread it away from you. And so what you would do is if you got this, you could see a little link at the end. You put in your friend's name. So this is Deepak Chopra's name. And it would put it into the video in all these different ways. And it's pretty clever, right? So, this was a clever thing.
Private citizen has become a national pariah. Fearing retribution, local police took the non-voter
they
into
put all this in.
protective
It's very
custody
clever. It's a
yesterday
nice
at
bit of-
City Hall.
yeah.
Disgruntled citizens have been demonstrating ever since.
You're supposed to Barack the vote. But what happened? The vote didn't even get Baracked.
I waited in line 5 hours to vote with an arthritic hip, and this mother lazy couldn't get out of bed in time to vote.
International reaction has been just as intense, even in some of the most remote locations.
यो मेरो अनुभवमा यो 2-4 सालभन्दा अहिले 5वटा पोखरी फुट्यो.
However, the non-voter has become a hero to a small sliver of the population.
I thank you for your service. I thank you for what you've done for the United States of America.
Bet that guy is a factor viewer. He's also a patriot.
Coming up, how long until we nuke Iran? Experts say it could be as early as Saturday, around lunchtime.
Right, so it would be your name, yeah. So it was cleverly done, and of course you could do it either side, you can do it a third side, you can do whatever you want, but jokes are things that spread very well, and they're a good example of, and we'll come back to this, BuzzFeed, that's what it lives on, right, is making jokes up. So, I know that was kind of political, but it's clever, right? This is a different one. There's another kind of spreading. Marbleization, like marbled meat. I know, some of you saw this yesterday for sure. Okay, so that's 10%, 14%, this is 15%, this is a classic thing. Now we're up above 20 to 24 is yellow, 25 to 29 will be red, and then darker than that is above 30. 2006, 7, 8, it's good. Yeah. It's obesity, percentage of the population.
Oh, mobilization.
So, mobilization. Well, that's true, but that's it. That's what's going on. Yeah. So that's an interesting kind of spreading, right? And there's work recently in the last few years that suggests that spreading of obesity is enhanced by through social networks. It's controversial work because and we'll come back to it later on. What's that? Well, that is the natural. Like you get rid of all your fat friends. That is exact right. And so people had to genuinely write that. I mean, that is the upshot of that. Yeah. Or do something about those friends. Like I don't know. But it's not. Maybe it's true, but it's an unclear kind of. The data set is tough.
Sexy Dracula. I make love to ladies and I survive.
I'm with Troy.
Guys, those are not zombies. Those are our classmates, and they're sick.
And they can make us sick by biting us. The banana said so.
It's true. The incubation only takes minutes. First you get a stomach ache, then your skin turns red, followed by cold sweats, muscle spasms, high fever, then the uncontrollable urge to bite on infected flesh.
Oh, jeez.
And I forgot one symptom.
slurred speech. You got bit! It felt like maybe I was special.
Special? You're not special. I'm special. I was bit 10 minutes ago and I'm...
Great! Nobody's special! Hey, Rich, just so you know, I hate you less now. That's how much I hate your normal self. You have to destroy the brain!
That's Gareth. Okay, so we'll have a few more clips from this particularly great episode because it's Halloween. But zombies, great spreading problem. So there's some nice math actually for zombie models, which we could get to later on. Yeah, well, yeah, it's a different dynamic. So you might as well. So you take basic disease models and put in a zombie situation. Yeah. Okay, so the thing about zombies is that zombies haven't really spread in real life, but the concept of zombies, absolutely, right? So this is from Google Ngrams. This is coming out of Haiti, right? Is the first kind of, when people talk about this zombification process, that maybe there's some using certain drugs and so on, that people that have been in some sort of deep coma for 20 or 30, lots of crazy claims, and it's disputed and so on. But it's been doing quite well for itself, So the idea spreads, right? That's often really much more the case. Fear spreads well, yeah? This thing? Do they hide the, oh, right, so this could be just very small. I think that is really meant to indicate 0. Yeah, you'll see, if it's a rare thing, you'll see these funny little blips and so on. Like Google has a little blip around 1900 actually, which is just some accident. I don't know what was being written about. Maybe it meant something. Actually, I don't know, but it's kind of funny.
No, it's just they came with a time.
That's bad. Wow, that is bad. I'll show you some more about baby name spreading later on. That's good stuff too. All right, so let's actually just. It's gonna be pretty simple. What we got? Is it dead?
After the light turned off and on. You're blinking red now. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Put some more into its brain. Okay, so we're going to talk about just a simple disease model, and because we have to start there, a lot of things are built out of this. It's less than 100 years old, I guess, the first work. Thank you. All right, good. That's great. Okay, so contagion. All right. Lots of different things spread, and it's pretty fantastic. So it's something that's spreading between individuals in a population, some quality, something. Okay. It could be the disease itself, or the act of it, or the people using different ways, right? So the dreaded lurgy, which I think comes from the goons, which is you guys don't know that. Monty Python, go further back. Good, again, sometimes our words have good origins, so together with and to touch. So it actually built into it is, the kind of good zombie type feel, right? You have to be in contact. But, with social spreading, for example, and certain kinds of diseases, there's environmental, essentially, or media for social spreading, right? So it can be much more complicated. Contagion has some, it's exciting, right? Sounds pretty bad. So spreading might be the better general overall term, right? That includes diffusion all the way through to, spreading of ideas in human society, right? This really is a ubiquitous phenomenon of systems. Huge thing. And again, good and bad stuff. So contagion's exciting, so we'll call it that. Yeah, it's a good handle. So there are infectious diseases and social contagion. There's work remains ongoing to kind of tease out how many different kinds of flavors of social contagion there are. There are things that spread kind of like diseases, but maybe not, right? So, all right, as I said, lots of examples. SARS was sort of the most recent big one, perhaps. Swine flu as well, right? These things where we're all terrified that it's going to take over. So we'll talk about prediction because that's what people are worried about. It turns out that prediction in disease spreading has been very limited for good reason, but it's nothing like, say, earthquakes, which again, still problematic, but we have, probably because we've been able to instrument that so well, and we have also, of course, better physical descriptions. We've gotten a fair way with that. But, just a year or two ago, a number of Italian scientists ended up in jail because they said that the earthquake that was coming was not going to be so bad, right? Italians, right? They can, you can go to jail for doing all sorts of things, or not. If you're Berlusconi. Okay. What's that?
What was the charge? Like sampling?
Just being wrong. Yeah. Essentially kind of being wrong because they just said it's going to be an earthquake next week or something, maybe kind of, but it's going to be, this is how bad it will be.
Would be less, which is generally the case, but they actually happen to be greater.
Yeah.
They told people that they could go back home, so people
Okay.
went back home and people died.
So,
Based on statistics like the distribution.
well, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Like here's what it was. But things get dislodged. I mean, like there's a fault. You don't know what. Right? Barely. Yeah. Bad. It's. Are they still in jail? Really? Berlusconi is not. Okay. Good. All right. I don't know about Berlusconi. Okay. Oh, okay. So the standard SIR model, right? So this is the traditional model that's been around for a long time. Susceptible, infectious. This could be zombies. You can have an SZR model. Recovered. Sometimes people say remove, which is a nice way of saying dead. Refractory means that you're in a state where you may become sick again, right? So if you have a very simple model where you just have a population, and you'll talk about the fractions of these guys, right? So this will be this one is the total population. So a problem with this is, of course, what are we talking about? A town or a country or the world, right? What is this one? But most models don't talk about the n, right? What's the overall number? So if you're trying to use these models to, something's taking off in Hong Kong or in Mexico, and you're like, which n do you use? You should be using the world, of course. And I'll point you to the more and more sort of elaborate things that keep getting developed that are doing a good job. Yeah, there's a lot I could add here. So just to say, these models, it's a random interaction model. And that gets a little lost, but that's really what's going on. They're random interaction models. So somehow these individuals are just randomly mixing. Fair enough, that's a good place to start. But you have to add the interaction structure pretty quickly, although it took us about 80 years to do it. All right, so it's not quite true. So
what about in the gridded SIR model experiments?
Put on a 2D grid? Well, I mean, you can.
It's not really random.
No, it's not. No, that's right. Yeah. And that makes sense for things that are really in 2 dimensions. Yeah. But as soon as you start modeling people, and this is what's been done in the last 10 years, you start thinking about how they move around, right? So you start thinking about how they, where they live, where they drop their kids off, right? You get census data out. So Los Alamos did this, and you get some sort of, basically simulating how the city functions. People moving around, on the subways and all these sorts of things. And then you start to think, well, what about the world? So then you get out data for plane flights. And then so you drop a disease in somewhere and you let it travel, right? So those simulate, and you can put in quarantine and recovery, right? Because people are going to start to respond, or countries will respond in certain ways, so you want to model that. But the economic impact is really tough as well. So you can't just sort of shut the whole thing down. Well, I'll quickly talk about both of those, but then I'll show you a little, we'll get to one that's just, so the idea will be, again, like I've been talking about, take the simple thing, move away from it a little bit, see how brittle it is, whether we can get some things, right? And then the kitchen sink thing that I've just been talking about, that's where you have to go. So we get some good insights from this to start with, for sure, absolutely. So one thing is that you forget. If you've been infected or not, you're just forgetting, right? So if someone sneezes on you, or they bite you, and you don't become a zombie, then you just kind of randomly go and bump into someone else, and they might or might not bite you, and you're like, okay, and then you randomly bump it. So this is really what's being modeled. Okay. So you can have discrete, continuous time ones, and of course, yeah, right. Look, the reason we put them on grids is, generally speaking, because that's easy to look at, right? Well, there are some motivations for doing it for sure, but
yeah, it's another layer of spatial detail not captured by
yeah.
where you would Superman.
Sure. But it's good to put them on a network, right? Or some kind of network that has some real origin. Yeah.
That next level of
Right. I mean, lattices are networks. Yeah, sure. Okay, so a very simple thing that happens, yes, and this is a discrete time version of it. So you have a pile of susceptibles. They're randomly bumping into their own kind, into infectives and people who are in a recovered state. And then, so this is a mass action. It's sometimes called a mass action principle. So that with probability, so now that because they're fractions, so I is a probability, you can think of it as a probability. I, if the fraction of the population is affected is a third, then we have an I here. So that's the probability that you bump into an infected. This is the probability you become infected. We just set some parameter beta, right? So then you move into an infected state, and then there's a simple probability of recovery. So you recover with probably little r, 1 minus r, you stay here. There's a big clock running. Okay, this is just a simple model. And if you get this recovered state, we can add another piece here, which is rho, right? So with these dashed lines. So if rho is 0, then you just stay here. You're recovered. You're immune to it now, right? You had chickenpox and you've gotten better. You've watched too many zombie movies, and now you don't watch them anymore, right? You could be reinfected, with that. Movies are good. That kind of cultural consumption is interesting, right? You overdose on it. Now I can't watch horror movies anymore, and then 5 years later, it's like, now I'm susceptible. Okay, right. So that's pretty simple. So beta is the infected, R is recovery, rho is loss of immunity. Okay, fine. And the original models are the 20s. There's Reed and Frost. I don't think this was officially published. There is Kermack and McKendrick, which could be a good band name, but it's 13, 14. There are 3 papers together. They're very similar sort of things. But there's differential equations, yeah, which are fun little things to write down. So it's this sort of stuff, right? So that was a little algorithmic piece before. So this is the fractional rate of change of the susceptible. The rate of change of the fraction that are susceptible. So again, now we have these 2 pieces, right? So there's a probability S. What you can think of as a probability and the not the probability, but you've got this is the rate at which susceptibles and infectors are hitting each other, right? Because it's random interaction. Right? So if they're both a half, then a quarter of the time susceptibles and infecteds are hitting each other, sort of thing, right? And then you lose. So the susceptibles, they're being drained out, right? You're losing them. If you susceptible hits an infective and with some rate beta, now it's a rate now, they become infected. You're also getting ones that were recovered. They're in the immune state, but they've moved back into being susceptible. They're like, maybe I'll watch a horror movie, right? So, and so this piece goes to here. So this is the rate of change of the infectives. We're losing infectives through just a random kind of relaxation here. If you took this piece out here, what's that equation solve as? Yeah, and can you see? So it's di dt equals minus some constant times I. What's the solution for that sort of thing? Right, so it's an exponential decay. Yeah, right? So this is a relaxation kind of piece. And it's going here, so it's growing on this side, and we're losing some in that way, right? So that's fun. You can solve these things. And you can complicate them in different ways. Okay, so here's a very important piece that came out of this original thing, and this is, I have to tell you the original stuff, okay? Is so-called R0 or R0. I say naught. So it's the expected number right, you've got someone as a new zombie, and they're running around randomly with other humans and zombies who are just randomly running around in some room. It's pretty scary, I guess. So how many do they get before they run out of their ability to infect other people, right? And in the simple SIR situation, they just recover, which we could think of recover as, double tap situation. All right. Okay, recover. So that's a good, so and here's the basic thing, right? So epidemic threshold, we get this term, if it's greater than 1, trouble, right? It's gonna grow because 1 zombie makes 1.2 zombies, right? And then we have 1.44 zombies in the next round, like over some time, yeah? So it assumes random mixing, but it's a good thing to come out of this, right? Okay, so we can actually I'll do a few quick little calculations for you to find out what that R naught is in terms of these very simple models. So we have our pile of humans that are just interacting with each other in a random fashion, right? And we throw a zombie in the middle and just let it go. And so they're all susceptibles, and there's one that's infected. Okay, so there bumps into a susceptible, right? Grr. And there's a probability of them biting successfully and getting across this beta. So we have that, and there's a probability that this zombie becomes a non-zombie, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Someone, obviously everyone has shotguns and spades and that sort of thing. This is what you should visualize. Okay. You could code this up. Be good. Okay, so that brings in a spatial issue as well. Zombies. That's right, that's true. So that's a couple of years ago, one of our students got very excited about this model and coded it up. So, okay, so time t equals k, that this zombie is still a zombie with this probability, 1 minus r to the k, right? So they haven't been removed through various attempts by the rest of the population, or just, natural failure. So there's somehow that's in there. All right, so then you can put all these pieces together. So the expected number, so your zombie gets someone in the first round, they get a chance, they make it through to the next round, and then they get someone. They only interact with one person at each stage. They make it through 2 rounds, they get this person, 3 rounds, right? So keep going. Okay, so that's I don't know why I really like this, but it's very simple, right? This is your geometric series business, right? So it's A times R, well, that's confusing. It's blob squared, blob cubed. So it's 1 over 1 minus blob. So beta over R. So that's pretty interpretable, right? So you want this thing to be greater than 1, right? So if we start with some fraction that are infected to start with, then R naught. What's that? Well, here's the problem. You can't put 1 in here. I said 1. What's that? You can't say 1. You can't say 1 because it's an infinite population. This is crazy. So we have to, it's a continuum approximation, right? So we put some of the fraction, some epsilon of this gigantic population that's interacting with itself. So that's why it is eventually, of course, much better to think of individuals and, but this is solvable, and we like differential equations, or we did. Now we don't like them anymore. What have I done? God. So you start with some fraction, and this is the gain, if you like, right? So it's a fair balance, right? So beta over R is greater than 1. Yeah, so S naught to start with is basically 1, right? So everyone's pretty much, there's a very tiny amount that are not infected, that are infected, but it's a fraction. So then you've got this piece here, it's the beta over R. So if that thing's greater than 1, then it takes off. So that's a reasonable balance, right? Beta is the infection probability, R is the recovery probability, right? So if those things balance each other out, recover faster than you infect, then it stops. Other way, it's exponential, zombie apocalypse situation, right? Zombie attack. All right, so okay, so the continuous one, similar sort of thing. So we had the second equation here. This is the rate of change of the infective population. We can just do some naughty little things with it. We're going to pull out the I over here and put it by itself. So it's beta S minus R. So this, so S of course is a function of time, but just at the start, it's basically 1, or it's S0. There's some initial value. It's not really changing much, right? The zombies are slowly getting into the population, but basically you've got a lot of people just walking around bumping into each other, and they're like, hey. So I don't know. They're like friendly. They think zombies are okay. This is a very bad model of humans, right? Okay, So again, it fits into this exponential growth story before, right? When we just had this, we had exponential decay. Now we have this blob times I. So essentially, it's going to grow exponentially if this quantity at time 0 is greater than 0. And it will decay if it's less than 0. So it's a different business. But basically, you end up with the same kind of expression, right? So I'm going to put the R on the other side, and then we have the same thing. So the initial fraction that are infected, beta over R, right? So it's the same story. All right, so that's a nice thing. So you can say, okay, if I knew this if this really did model the real world, and I knew this about, I knew beta and I knew R, I could tune one of them, right? Like with vaccinations or double tap kind of situation, right? If you could dial one of those things up and you say, okay, now it's less than 1 and the thing's going to die out. And that's, and that is actually policy, right? That manifests eventually as policy. They're talking about there is a reproduction number because we like to measure complex systems and turn them into one number. This is a terrible thing that we do, but this would be great, right? There's a measles outbreak in the Congo. Its reproduction number is 7. Let's make it 0.9. I mean, it seems great. Like there's a thing, but it's much more complex, obviously. All right. Oh yeah. This is experiments in silliness, but in the little thing, it's just got there's a little video in the corner there.
You see,
so
the first time I let a girl into my life and she tries to eat me.
Zombieland, yeah. You don't have to see this. This is just supposed to happen accidentally on the side. Correct, yeah.
Please, listen to me. 406. If you're in there, you're just sick, okay?
God. So that's rule number 2, double tap. Okay. That was the top of the cistern from a bathroom unit. Okay. All right. The point of that was it was just supposed to happen in the corner. But anyway, all right. Maybe I should have showed you something. Okay. We've seen this kind of thing before. Phase transitions. This is exactly the game, right? It's what we would call it's a continuous phase transition. All right. By the way, the Community episode, the whole zombie thing, all through it is ABBA music, which is really, really fantastic. It's really great. So you should check that out. Right. So this is this is the final fraction that will be infected to turn into zombies. Of course, they will de-zombie at some point, but it's a simple story, right? This is great. Not bad, very bad. And it's like somewhat bad, and it's really bad, and blah blah blah, right? So that's the underlying story with a lot of the thinking. I mean, makes sense, but to have it just as one number is a bit much. All right, so simple model. Okay, good. So we're going to address that. We're going to try and at least move away from that simple model and just a simple step. And I'll mention how other people have done this a little bit, and also then, of course, these really, the kitchen sink thing where you model the everything business, which is very hard, right? They get to be very complicated, and you're not quite sure what's under the box, right? That's really problematic. But it's the right thing to do. All right. So you can have SIS type things, so you can get susceptible, infective, susceptible. These are fun models to play around with, SIRS, which we talked about. Compartment models where you start to say there's still a sort of an infinite population, but now we're going to group people in certain ways, and they have some interactions between each other. There's so it's not quite networks. This is something that was, we're kind of, back in time, we're tied to wanting to be able to solve things and so on. There's exposed, for example, so you're exposed to you stick that guy in there, that's a bad thing, right? And diseases are, the ones that have evolved are, I can use the wrong words here, but they've the ones that have succeeded, right, have certain clever properties about them, and one is to, infect someone without them knowing or exhibiting their zombie-like state, just as we saw in that example in the study room. That's good. That's good for spreading your zombification situation, right? Because people will go in and get the next ones. All right. Other things, people moving, right? So populations changing, moving. You can add lots of other pieces. So that's certainly been worked on a lot. Right, another example. Before we go into some of the models, I'm going to talk about prediction. Yeah, that's going to be, actually if you search for Contagion on Google image search, it's all this. It's just like a million versions of this thing. Yeah. Nothing spreads like fear. Okay. Maybe not this movie. I don't know if it did so well. Right? Kind of a stinker.
One of the famous people died really quickly.
Oh, well, that's promising, but I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. They're gone straight away. Yeah. That's always good. What else did they do that? Well, Psycho, I guess, famously kind of has that, where the main character, in some sense, you would think, is gone, like a third of the way in. Drew Barrymore, which is the correct thing to have done. But anyway, sorry. Not a fan. Okay, so that's true. Yeah. That was well done by her. Yeah, that was good. Yeah. Yep. E.T., right? Yeah. Games. So there are some games. This is a pretty cool game, actually, Pandemic. But it's basically, and then I'm going to claim that this might become contagious. I think these are good cooperative. So it's a cooperative game, right? You're fighting against. You're trying to save the world collectively. You're not fighting against each other. You get your own fluffy white cat and stuff like that. Is it like you have to sit in a swivel chair? Madagascar, tricky, yeah. You gotta get zombie lemurs. That would be it.
They shut down their ports really quickly.
Okay. Is this an online game?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, I think that sounds educational. Good. So this has just appeared. Actually, this is pretty soon. You guys should play around with this. I'm gonna. So this is called Vax. Is it gonna work? Okay. Yep. So there's a little tour. You can look at basically all those things. Let me see if I can kill everyone. Yes. Okay. So there are people in here. So I've got so many vaccines, right? And so you go around and you try to. Oh God. You can vaccinate. There's a ticking bomb here, which is the disease is going to start somewhere. And I've got so many vaccines, and I better get them in there because I'm worried about it. And they're just going to appear soon, right? Oh, trouble. Oh. And now you can quarantine, right? But their vaccine refuses. The yellow ones you could not block at the start. How's this doing? Oh, trouble. Oh! Oh, God, that was close. Because it's a little fiddly, and if you miss it, it will just, the little bean goes along it. Yes! Victory. Anyway, so that's kind of fun. What's that?
So the trick is creating fragile structures, not totally isolated structures.
Yeah.
So that you're not wasting early vaccines on completely isolating.
Yeah. Sorry, have you played this thing? Oh, good. All right. Good. Excellent use of time.
Break down its ability to spread in an uncontrolled way.
Yeah.
And just allow it to spread linearly to some place where you can put in that.
You can cut some things. Yeah. I mean, what's hard to say, I mean, you can see this with, let's just say, what's hard to, it's not a huge network, but what's hard to see about this is, how do you start cutting it? Right? I mean,
once you get it into a ring network, then it doesn't get. Oh, you can move it around.
You can move it around. It's pretty cool. Actually, I was getting.
The stuff with long jumps.
Oh, and they kind of the node sizes reflect their degree. It looks like.
So it's kind of natural to go for hubs and so on, but you kind of have to prune a little bit and then start to see what you're getting.
Going for hubs.
I'm in so much trouble now, I think. Yep. Eek. Oh, everyone is gonna die. This one is. This is. Okay. This is Australia. It's gone.
You can save
No, dead. Okay. So it's a fun game. I think that's it. Yeah, so that was bad. Started slow. So that was started slow. There was some debate in Congress whether we should let the vaccine out, and but the survival rate for that one is 40. That's your game, right? Anyway, so that's fun. It was a nice name. It's called Vax. That was clever. So that is from a research group at Penn State, and they are working on
Are they collecting data somehow?
I don't know. It's a fun little game. It's not clear that this is. I mean, the pandemic game, that board game, is already that, and the one that you play where you try to kill everyone sounds like.
You get to like upgrade your like little bacteria virus.
Is that so? It's online. You should send me a link for that one. Okay, I'm just going to quickly touch on this before we go. Right, you want to know how bad it's going to be while you're running around trying to. There's a nice touch where they have the vaccine refusers on the HUD, right? On the simple one, it's small, and you don't have that, right? But then you have the, right? This is a big problem. I mean, people start to say, I don't need because of people are worried about autism, that connection, and all those sort of things. This Lancet paper from 1998 that said the connected MMR to the mumps, measles, and rubella that kids all get because it was terrible, and we figured out vaccines. So that's been retracted. That paper. It's from 98, and it said there was a connection to it. Right? I know there are individual stories about it, but
No, but you have to ask the question: would you rather have your kid have autism, or would you rather have them die from the mumps?
yeah. See, no one knows what the mumps is anymore. They don't know. I mean, I guess we need YouTube videos or something, but because you're right, they don't know. They don't see it. So you're like, okay, well, it's fine. And especially if you think, well, if everyone else is doing it, they all take it, then I can ride the system. And so now you start to see these. It's a very unfortunately natural thing that will happen. You get whole communities that say no vaccination, and then we have to rediscover it. This is bad. Then you find out what it's like. Yeah, it's a bad thing. So I'll show you some data from Iceland where they've kept really nice records for over 100 years, and you see these waves of infection coming in. It's it's interesting because it's isolated. You see it die out, and then someone has come from Europe or the US and sets off again. And then it's gone after the 60s, right? Because you have, whenever it came in, yeah.
Seems like it could really
You mean, yeah, well, yeah, while you're doing it. I mean, essentially you're kind of doing something like that, right? But it's messy, that's the thing. It's not like.
You can pin nodes down.
Yeah, so, yeah.
To help you investigate.
To sort it out a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm saying you spend some time investigating the malware, applied the theorem,
All right, challenges.
number of cuts.
Report back your highest score on the difficult one. And then you can tell and you can tell us what your great methods were. So James had one. And you want to, yeah. Let me quickly say these things. So can we predict? Right, we've got these things spreading across the world. How can we predict how big it's going to be? And you'd think our naught would be key to this, right? Measured in some way, and certainly. So basically, you need some more complicated version. But the argument I want to give you is that we focused on that a lot. But look at this. So it's approximately R naught after the fact is about the same for all of these spreads. Right? There's only about 800, maybe 1,000 deaths for SARS. Of course, lots of underreporting in China, who didn't really tell us about it for a while. It was clear that it happened a year before as well. There'd been a wave there as well. Hong Kong. So they're very different outcomes, right? So this is there's a lot of randomness in here, and I'll show you this is a very nasty, probabilistic kind of situation. Of course, we know about size distributions. We know that they're important in lots of other things. We have explanations, more or less for some of them. What about epidemics? And of course we see power laws. It's not always the case. Well, it just hadn't got a lot of attention for a long time. Scientifically, I think. We didn't really kind of have the story. But and one fair point here is that the data is messy, right? Data is messy. And especially if you have responses, people start to it's not a pure system where you're spreading something, right? I mean, fun, right? So you say, okay, no one's allowed to get vaccinated. Let's just test how this thing spreads. No, that's not good. So here's the Iceland data. It came up close. So it's 1888 to 1990. These are normalized counts based on the population, which didn't grow much over that time. And you can think of these outbreaks as sort of separate events, right? So we've got these separate spikes. And there's also Faroe Islands is a kind of magical place, I suppose, but it also has some good data. So a couple of examples here. This is for measles, rubella or German measles, and pertussis, whooping cough. And so you see there's a break in the axis here. There's a huge number that are relatively small. This is the final fraction that are infected. Yeah, see, this is not good. That S is from that S is size, final size. So that shouldn't, it's from some other notation. All right. But you're getting these things. So it's basically a kind of a spike and then almost, a pretty flat distribution out here. So once it takes off, the final size is almost chosen from a uniform distribution, which is pretty bad. I mean, it would be bad if it was chosen from one, like if it takes off and that's what happens. But it's a lot of unpredictability there. This is trying to look at it, trying to find power laws because everyone loves power laws. It's the same things here. This is trying to fit this is the complementary cumulative. So now there's a psi for the size. Oh, good. All right. These fits, maybe there's some scaling, but you can see there's one order of magnitude here. It's very dubious stuff. We know about these kinds of scalings. It's pretty shaky, basically. So the upshot, and we'll finish with one little video. So the upshot is basically, what happens is either it doesn't really take off or it takes off to some really kind of random amount. And a lot of the simple models, either it takes off or it's one typical size. Okay, so we'll finish with this.
But the only people getting sick are the ones eating what I bought at your surplus store.
Look, ma'am, I never said the stuff was delicious, but you can't.
Okay, so this is the outbreak is happening. This is the dean of the school, and this is Lady Gaga, so it all connects.
But the only people getting sick are the ones eating what I bought at your surplus store.
Look, ma'am, I never said the stuff was delicious, but you can't get sick from it. It's non-perishable.
What about the taco meat stuff?
The what?
The classic flavor?
Huh?
The one with the goofy label. Here.
What's goofy label? What are you...
Classified Phoenix. If found, repeat key phrase. Echo Tango X-ray 997. Yeah.
Okay. These are the packages, right? You can see it, right? Two people, one person biting the other person, right? Before, after. And so it says, if found, this is what happens. If found, repeat this thing. Right. And that's a little Easter egg that just says, welcome to community. You can really remind me later.
Yeah, sounds delicious. Anyway, it looks like taco meat and... Hello?
Greendale Community College.
Speaking.
This is Special Operations Officer McHenry.
Hi.
I need you to listen to me very carefully.
Okay, so there'll be a little conclusion to that later. But yeah, this has happened before. So yeah, be careful about zombies. All right, team. More about Contagion next Tuesday.